Welcome everybody to another Talking Trees. This is a series of interviews at the border between nature, music, reforestation and culture. And I'm very, very excited to be talking to Marcéu Lima today. He's a musician, a musical educator, born in Bahia, currently living in the States. And yeah, super excited to have him on board. This series is in support of a project called Trees of Music, and with Trees of Music we're planting 50,000 trees from the Pernambuco or pau-brasilia species, and these are the trees used to make violin bows, because these trees are super endangered. There's about 1,500 of them left in the wild. But we're starting with the classical music, but also really interested in Afro-Brazilian rhythms. We're looking at projects further up the coast in Bahia, an agroforestry system with birimba, which is what you use to make birimbau, and jacarandá, which is rosewood, and all kinds of things like that. So this is starting with classical music, but we're going to be introducing all kinds of different musical forms. So very excited to have Marcéu along. How are you doing, Marcéu?
Pretty good. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure.
Welcome. Where are you speaking from?
I'm speaking from Santa Barbara. It's a place called Santa Barbara, but the indigenous name of this place is Chumash territory, unceded Chumash territory. So I'm speaking from this beautiful land here called Santa Barbara, California.
I see. And great. So tell us a little bit about maracatu.
So I'm from Bahia, as you mentioned, Camaçari. I come from a family of samba chula players, which is an Afro-Brazilian rhythm that has the same foundation of the Afro-Brazilian rhythms from Pernambuco. So maracatu is a rhythm that has the homeland in Pernambuco, the Atlantic coast of the northeast of Brazil. So Pernambuco has two different types of maracatu. So there's one type of maracatu called maracatu baque-solto, or maracatu rural, which is more from the countryside of Pernambuco, more close to a city called Nazaré. And maracatu nação, maracatu de baque virado, which is the type of maracatu that I play, that I study, it's more on the coast area, Pernambuco, Recife, it's the capital. So maracatu nação is a kind of maracatu that's very based on the Afro-Brazilian religion called candomblé. Some people, some mestres and mestras from maracatu that I studied, they say that the maracatu, it's the candomblé itself being manifested on the streets with drums and music and colors and all the elements. So maracatu nação is based on a big and beautiful and strong percussion section, and also the royal court that it's being bringing the elements of the Afro-Brazilian culture disguised under the umbrella of the European court, because that's how they're allowed to express their culture. It was like by the syncretism, disguising their own culture behind the culture of the colonists. So basically, maracatu, it's a beautiful rhythms, big drums, there's music and call and response, and they're all Afro-Brazilian rhythms coming from the candomblé.
And I'm very curious. So when you talk about it coming from candomblé, what's the origin story then of this particular type of maracatu?
So maracatu people, a lot of people, they acknowledge that the culture of maracatu comes from the Nago nation. Nago nation is one of the Yorubas ethnicities, and they brought their culture when the people got enslaved and they came here to the Americas. So this type of maracatu, it's very connected with a lot of the Congo expression of art culture. They also, there's some books that say that the roots of maracatu comes from the coronation of the king and the queen of the Congo nation. So there's some lineage of this type of maracatu nation that attributes their origins to the maracatu, to that manifestation. So when they're like during the coronation of the king and the queen, they brought their percussion to the streets and they played those rhythms, and they kept doing that when they came here. But because of the oppression and the colonialism, they had to adopt other elements of different cultures, including indigenous people from Brazil. So it's a big mix of there's even elements of the European culture inside of the maracatu.
Sounds like a very Brazilian story. You know, in Brazil, there's Brazilians are very used to, for a long time, dealing with being on the business end of empire, let's say, and being on the business end of empire is you don't really want to fight it straight on. All kinds of cultures have stayed alive by keeping their heads down. You've got the whole Quilombo culture, which are these until today, in fact, these are settlements which were from escaped slaves, and they're all over Brazil. And some of these places, they're not even on the map. And in fact, one of the projects that we've got at RAIN, that's rainumbrella.org, by the way, if you want to see the other projects that we're doing. One of these projects is with the Quilombo in Minas Gerais. And literally, when our team went to go and talk to them, it wasn't on the map, and they spent quite a long time looking around the city to find someone who could take them there. Interesting. And I imagine that the trees from the Congo nation and the trees that were encountered in Brazil would have been different kinds of trees. Did the percussion change according to the nature that they encountered when they came to Brazil?
Yes, it did. Initially, they, as you mentioned, they couldn't bring their own instruments, so they had to adapt. So they use a lot of barrels that was available in the time, and wooden barrels and animal skins and ropes, and they made really simple instruments, and that pretty much are the same shape and using the same elements nowadays. And when they got in Brazil, they found a tree called macaúba. Some people say macaíba as well, which is a palm tree, and it's hollow inside. So people started using that, and some people say that the story was the indigenous people in Brazil. They opened up the secrets of the forest to the African people, and they gave that knowledge to them. They passed that knowledge to them because they related to the pain that the people were suffering, and they're like, here's some elements for you to have to keep your culture alive, to keep your knowledge alive. So it's a little escape that you can have in all of the oppression. So, and if we kept our culture alive, my ancestors kept their culture alive and passed down through generations now to me, and I'm here in California spreading that knowledge. So it's really beautiful. I brought here with me some samples of the instruments I can show you too, like on the video really quick.
Yes, please.
So here is the macaíba, just the body of the instrument. So as you can see, it's hollow inside, and they cut in pieces. This macaíba was already dead. They not cut new trees, so they use trees that are already dead. And this one it's a big one. I believe it's 20 inches. Really beautiful. And I brought another one here. That's more commercial one, and people are using this one a lot nowadays. It's made of plywood, and so as I said, it has the shape of a barrel, and it has this ring here on top and the skin on both sides and the rope. So you use the rope to tie them together, and you play on the skin, making the sound. There's one skin that's beating, and the other one is more just for the response. Unfortunately, I can't play it right now because there's another meeting happening here on the other room. I would love to play for you guys, but I would disturb all of my colleagues here. But I can send you guys some videos that we can share, the links, and show the sound of the alfaias.
Okay, and that's the name of the drum, is it, alfaia?
The name of the drum is called alfaia or bombo. And alfaia is, there's a lot of people that relates to the Middle Eastern culture. Alfaiate is the word of people who makes clothes. So those people who also makes clothes, they also they baptize the name of this instrument. So there's a relationship between the Malay people, which is the people from the Middle Eastern area. So yeah, it's
And
a big melt pot of cultures.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So tell me, you mentioned that it was made out of a macaúba palm, but a dead one. Is that because it can't be made out of a live one, or that's the tradition, or what's going on there?
That's a good question. It's good to make out of a dead one because it's already dried, but they also don't want to try to cut any more trees of macaúba because there's almost no more macaúba trees in the Pernambuco Atlantic coast. So people are being conscious about it, not use all of the resources that are there available. So they try to use only the ones that are already dead, they're already fell, so they can use the tree to make. And there's like some projects of trying to plant more macaúbas to provide that precious material to a lot of different types of usages. So
yeah, something to say about the macaúba is it's a very interesting tree. Let me just bring myself. Oh, there I am. The macaúba is sort of a Macau palm, which is what palm oil is. Palm oil is made out of the African palm and also out of the Macau palm. And when we see the images of destruction of Indonesian forests and other forests, there's a whole lot of production of palm oil, and it comes from the African palm. And this is actually an alternative. And there's one of the really interesting things I saw about macaúba, the Macau palm, is that when it's planted in agroforestry systems, so that means when it's planted with companion species in Brazil, you would expect the yield to be lower because there's less palms. But actually, the way that agroforestry works is the different species support each other. So the macaúba palm will be supported by other trees, which provide nutrients, and the yields are in fact larger, which is to say that it outcompetes a polyculture outcompetes monoculture, as well as producing a whole lot of other plants at the same time, including food, as well as providing a whole lot more ecosystem services as well, because a monoculture is it doesn't do the same kind of things for the environment. It doesn't have the same biodiversity in terms of insects and all the rest, and it doesn't have the same resistance to disease as well. And you're right, there are projects for the macaúba palm, and the potential for using macaúba instead of palm oil, both in cosmetics and in food and all that kind of stuff. And also, where I used to live in Minas Gerais, there was a place called Jabuticatubas, and the lamps in the street used to be lit by oil from the macaúba palm. Yeah, so this is a biofuel which has a long history in Brazil, and perhaps, I would hope, a future in Brazil as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you tell me a little bit more then about the relationship between Maracatu and the forest and nature?
Yes. So Candomblé is a religion that it's nature-based, right? So the orishas, all the deities, all the spirits and ancestors in that religion, they have some relationship with nature. So, for example, Shango is a god that it's always related to fire, to the lightnings. Yansan, another goddess that is related to the winds. Oshun to the waters. Iemanjá to the salt waters. So there's a lot of nature being the foundation for this religion. And as Maracatu is based on that religion, all the elements are based on that too. So a lot of the songs, for example, that we sing to those orishas and to those elements of nature. And people lived in harmonious relationship with nature, and nature provided that knowledge to them. So nature gave them that information. Now you can use this palm tree here in Brazil because you don't have your original tree that you used to make your instruments there, but you can use this palm tree over here. And there's goat skins that you can use, and the genipapo, another tree that the indigenous people gave to them, so you can use the rim because it's a really strong wood that can resist to a lot of tension. So it's always connected to that. So the clothes that people are using it, and the paints on their face, and the songs, the stories they are talking about is always related to nature. There's this longing to reconnect with nature. So you can notice in the songs, especially the old ones, especially the ones that are still in Yoruba, in the songs, there's this longing for reconnecting with nature because people were separated apart, and we want to feel connected again. We don't want to be humans and nature. We want to become one thing itself. So that the songs are like reminding us to go back to that moment. So it's all about nature.
And is the beat? I mean, the basic beat. Maybe you can just demonstrate. I know you don't want to get your drum out and disturb your neighbors, but maybe you can
I'll play a little bit. Yeah, so I'll play a little bit and sing a song too. Maybe my neighbors, they're not gonna kick me out. I'm gonna put this piece of glass here. So, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, is this a song to a particular orisha, or maybe just tell us a little bit about what the song's about?
So this song is about. I told about the coronation of the king and queen of the Congo nation. So the song is about the coronation of the king and queen, the African kings and queen. So reminding us that my ancestors, the Black people, the African people, they are kings and queens too. Like they come from royal family. So I'm gonna get this. We use this to support the alfaya. We play it here, hanging from the side, because usually maracatu are played on the streets, and we are playing and marching and playing and walking at the same time. So we play here on the side. I'm gonna hit the drum just to test the sound really quick. Let me know if it's clipping. Can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear. We can hear that.
Okay. So I'm gonna try to play not too loud. But one of the basic rhythms from maracatu, it's like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Salve o rei que veio de África, rainha se coroou. Salve o rei que veio de África, rainha se coroou. Nagô, nagô, rainha se coroou. Nagô, nagô, rainha se coroou. Salve o rei que veio de África, rainha se coroou. Salve o rei que veio de África, rainha se coroou. Nagô, nagô, rainha se coroou. Nagô, nagô, rainha se coroou. E salve o rei que veio de África.
Takes me straight back to Brazil, man. Beautiful. And that particular rhythm. So I understand there's, from what I know of Umbanda, I don't know so much about Candomblé. From what I know about Umbanda, you have different rhythms for different orishas. And I was about to say that represent different forces of nature, but they don't even represent different forces of nature. They are the forces of nature in a different form. Is that particular rhythm connected to a particular orisha then, or that's the coronation in itself?
So this particular rhythm of the maracatu is developing along the years. Maracatu is getting popular. Maracatu is going through a process of becoming, I don't want to say commercial, but it's more like recognized. So you see that with samba in Rio de Janeiro, samba in São Paulo, the samba schools, they came from a super simple pattern, simple instruments, people playing plates and gourds and like super simple things. Now you have like 50 different types of drums in samba. You have 300 people playing the samba schools, and the arrangements are like beautiful, crazy, and playing super fast. So maracatu is going through similar process. So the original rhythms, the traditional rhythms in the past were played by like 10 players at the most, like 5 big drums like that I was playing, called the alfaya, the bombo. And each one had a different size, and each one had a different role, and they would play a different rhythm. So the rhythm that I played, it was one of the most basic rhythms that people were holding that, and some other people playing a little bit more complicated, and some of the most virtuoso players, they were like doing the the breaks and the all the crazy variations. But it was basically that. So they used that simple foundation to sing to all orishas, to all elements. So, and the beats didn't change as much. What changed was more like the intention, the songs, the words that they're using it. But the maracatu foundation, the clave, what we call the heartbeat of maracatu, is basically like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pa, 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 pa. And that goes on, that's played by the metal instrument that holds the clave, and that's it. They play that, and all the other drums just lay their track on it, and then we keep it simple but super strong. That's the foundation of maracatu. But it's changing. People are playing faster and coming up with new breaks and new beats, new arrangements. Estrela Brilhante do Recife is a big school that it's bringing a lot of like new things with a lot of respect to the traditions too. So let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things about the heartbeat is you don't want it to change because the heartbeat should keep on going as it is. Otherwise, you're in trouble. And that kind of driving rhythm wants to stay where it is, or at least wants to have some kind of continuity from the baby all the way to the old man.
Right.
I see. But you say it's simple, to compare that to European music, or it's still, there's still offbeats, there's still all kind of complexity, and I wonder how that relates to the diversity of the Brazilian experience, and also the diversity of the the biodiversity, the kind of environment that it comes out of. You find also in for example, polyphonic and polyphonic music is the music of the mountains in Europe anyway. And when you had monotonal or monophonic music, which has got a whole lot less rhythms and a whole lot less voices and a whole lot less drones. The reason that the polyphonic music survived in the mountains is because those are the places that are difficult to conquer. And these I don't want to be too simplistic about this, but these imperial cultures, they don't really run on complexity. Complexity is something which survives, if it can, in the belly of that beast, and something which is really to be supported and to be loved, really to be loved. So what do you think then that people who have a love for Brazilian music can be doing to support the ecology of Brazil and to protect the ecology of Brazil?
Thank you so much for that question. It's a really important question. And I just want to touch a little bit on what you said in respect of the being simple, but having a lot of swing on it, having a lot of, that complexity that comes from the being simple. So I think it's because of the observation of nature. Like I saw this video that said that humans are the only species that can predict rhythms, that can predict the next beat. So in nature, if you give to any other animal to try to play a beat in that consistent pattern, they're not going to do it. But we can observe them and learn from them. So I think those polyphonics rhythms come from a lot from that. And that's what I recommend to a lot of people. It's to observe when they come to Brazil, when they want to support Brazilian music and Brazilian ecology. Come and observe a lot, come experience, go to the maracatu's source, go learn from the teachers, go support them, take classes with them. There's a lot of information now that we can get through YouTube, through social media, but I recommend you going to those communities, meeting those people, talking to them, learning directly from them. And if you have financial resources, please use your financial resources to contribute, because culture is one of the areas that are like most being affected by the pandemic. So I believe that's a really beautiful way to support. It's like connecting with people.
And on that matter, you can check out treesandmusic.org. We have fundraisers for our projects, for, as I mentioned, the Pau Brasilia, the violin bow, project, but also for these Afro-Brazilian musical styles and the trees used to make the instruments for these kind of things. So go and check out rainumbrella.org. Check out the projects that you can see there, and also Trees and Music, treesandmusic.org. I mean, you say something very interesting there, that other animals can't predict beats. There's an animal. It's called slime mold. It's not an animal, actually. It's a type of fungus. Very, very fascinating single-celled creature, which it's quite famous because its intelligence is spectacular. It finds the quickest routes between food sources. It has some kind of a spatial map, which no one seems to understand because it's literally one-celled creature. And these creatures, they do come together. Certain environmental conditions, they come together to make a slug and they crawl off. And certain environmental conditions, they come together to make a mushroom that grows and then spores. But this, it was Japanese academic team that tested the slime mold, and it found that it could actually predict rhythms, in the sense that if they feed this thing, no, they didn't feed it. If they exposed it to a chemical which was damaging, every hour on the hour, this slime mold learned to 5 minutes before the hour came, it learned to start retreating, right? And I find that fascinating, So maybe the animals can't predict, but the network that forms, which is what a slime mold does, somehow predicts music, predicts that kind of rhythm. And I don't know what that means, but I think it talks again about the importance of diversity, the importance of the network, and the intelligence of a network. And that's what we're doing at RAIN. RAIN is we base our model on the mycorrhizal root network. How do trees communicate through the mycelia underground? So we work underground. We don't impose our own rhythm onto our Brazilian projects. We don't impose our own ideas. We produce media and we send it off, and we collect money and we send it off to Brazil to support people, because people know what they're doing. In a local area, people know what the threats are and they know how to deal with them. And if anything, we've learned over the last few hundred years, it's that the best way to let people, the best way to deal with environmental problems is to let people on the front line do what they're doing, and to support them from beneath and to support them from the back. I'm curious about where things are going with Brazilian rhythms, and with, before we hit the record button, we were talking about hip hop. And so what's going on?
So that's a good question, because a lot of maracatu, when I play here, when I share the maracatu rhythms here to people here, they immediately connect with hip hop, because of the offbeat feeling, because of that type of feeling. Especially some of the rhythms are very play on the upbeat, and people are like, wow, this is really similar to hip hop. And then I go a step further and I show them and I share with them about a guy called Chico Sainz in Nação Zumbi. I don't know if you ever heard about him, but he is one of the amazing artists that unfortunately died in the 90s. But he was taking that tradition to a different level. He was pushing further with bringing elements of American culture, of distorted electric guitars and a bunch of samples and effects, but with big drums, with big alfaias. And the way that he was singing, rapping, and using the elements of hip hop, it was really beautiful and something that inspires me a lot. So when I came here, I wanted to do something similar. I want to feed that culture that they call it, they give it a name called mangue beat. So mangue is the mangroves of the on the Atlantic coast, especially Recife. It's a city that it was built on mangue, and so they call it the mangue beat culture. So when I started playing here, I started making a lot of collaborations with people around hip hop music and rap. So bringing those cultures together, bringing the roots of the same tree together to interact and recognize that we are part of the same system. So it's been really, really pleasure to do that project here.
And isn't it interesting that both of those cultures are kind of cultures that grew up again, somewhat rejected cultures, sometimes somewhat outside of the mainstream and somewhat oppressed. And it seems that particular edge, that particular area is where a whole lot of culture arises. And Marcel, we've just got a couple of seconds left in the broadcast. It's really good to talk to you. It's gone like that. Where can we find out a bit more about your music, about what you're doing?
Unfortunately, I'm out of social medias. I had to take some time off because it was consuming me a lot, with especially during COVID and pandemic. But you can all find me on Facebook. I'm back on Facebook. Just type my name, Marcéu Lima. I got a project called Grupo OSE, OSE. I'll share the links on my Facebook page. I don't have a lot of information right there. I need to upload more of my information, but you can find me on Facebook, Marcéu Lima.
Looking forward to hear more. You can find Trees of Music on Facebook as well, on Twitter, on all of those places, Instagram even, although I'm a little bit old to understand Instagram myself. Also rainumbrella.org. Please check us out. Come and have a look. If you want to get on the mailing list, we'll be telling you about all the various things coming up, including live shows and performances. And if you want to get involved in supporting projects in Brazil, supporting reforestation in Brazil, supporting communities. We're working in Recife, where you were talking about earlier, in Pernambuco. We started one project with one Black women's group in a favela, in an urban slum, and this has now exploded. We're working with a group called Rede pela Transição, which means a network for transition, network for agroecological transition, working with food security and agroecology, because when the pandemic hit, people were really hungry in Brazil. What are we going to do? So we put together an educational, or I say we, our partners in Brazil, put together an educational booklet produced for people who can't read very well, with a whole load of diagrams about how to collect water off your roof with PET bottles, with plastic bottles, and how to grow things in your yard and all this kind of stuff. Now, this project expanded from one favela into 9 favelas with a fundraising drive, and now we're looking at translating it into French, Swahili, and Arabic to use. I've been talking to a guy in a Ugandan refugee camp, and we're looking at expanding into the Palestinian occupied territories as well. So, you know, these simple techniques can bring people together. And you know, we're looking at a difficult future here, and it really is a time to be thinking quite carefully about how we work and how we can work together and how we can support each other. Marcel, thank you again very much. It's been fascinating to talk to you, and I'm sure we'll be in touch down the road.
Thank you so much, Danny. Have a nice one and enjoy your day.
Cheers. Take care, man.
Bye.
Bye-bye.